Hi students, in this video I'm going to talk about the Mexican-American War. So when we left off last time, John Tyler had succeeded in annexing Texas to the United States. He had planned, but he was without a party. The Whigs didn't like him because he wouldn't charter a new national bank, and the Democrats didn't like him because he wasn't a Democrat. And so he initially planned to run in the election of 1844 as an independent, but realized he had little support. And for the Democrats, Martin Van Buren, who had been president for a term before, thought that he would be the nominee. But he was rejected by his own party because he didn't believe enough in expansionism. He didn't believe enough in manifest destiny. And so the Democrats instead choose James Polk. On the other side, on the Whig side, Henry Clay expected to be able to, was running for president for the third time, thought that it would be third time lucky. But he wasn't committed enough in opposition to slavery. And so this third party, this Liberty Party, takes a lot of votes away from him, and Polk becomes the president. And that shows you that these are the issues that are rising to the surface in American politics in the middle of the 19th century. The issue of slavery and the issue of expansion. James Polk is famous for having an amazing work ethic. He had vowed just to be a one-term president, and so he has a lot of projects to get through. He's really a man on a mission. And he's successful in all of them. And he's a Democrat, and he has a lot of support from the South. So he's going to reduce the rate of tariff. That will please the South and annoy the North. He's going to refuse to establish a new federal bank. Pleases the same people, displeases the same people. He succeeds in gaining control of all of Oregon territory from the British and agreeing that by a treaty. Remember that the previous treaty, been agreed by John Quincy Adams, had allowed this territory to be used by both British and American settlers to hunt and to colonize. But under this treaty, the 49th parallel is extended. The border that marks the border between the United States and Canada and Minnesota and North Dakota is extended all the way to the Pacific coast. So that's 3 goals. The last goal is a war with Mexico to secure New Mexico and California. So you see how Polk's goals are reducing the tariffs, reducing federal involvement in the states, which is what Southerners want, and supporting expansion. And so he needs to go to war with Mexico. But we're told that what he wants is a small war. He doesn't want a long war that's going to be expensive. A lot of people are going to die. And he doesn't want the possibility of a victorious general becoming a political rival. And so he provokes a war with Mexico by sending troops south of what Mexico considered the border between Mexico and Texas. Mexico attacks them, and now Polk has the war that he wanted. And most people go along with this war. Most Americans are fired up to attack Mexico and to defeat Mexico. It's a part of the United States' manifest destiny. There are some that resist, however. There are some that resist on the grounds that they don't like expansionism, that the United States seems to be becoming an imperial power, and that part of the identity of the United States was fighting against imperialism. And also there are those who wish to abolish slavery, who are concerned that these new lands that the United States is going to try and take from Mexico will become more slave states like Texas. It's also true that the United States was poorly prepared to fight this war, just as it was poorly prepared to fight the War of 1812. There are only 7,000 troops in the United States Army at the beginning of this war. By the end of the war, that's been raised to almost 80,000 troops. But they are constantly outnumbered. They're also not particularly well trained. They're also not particularly well disciplined. And we're told that they had a lot of them really mistreated the Mexican people who they would come in contact with, especially on the grounds of the Mexican people's Catholic faith. There's even a famous story of German and Irish Catholic immigrants who were fighting in the American army who went over to fighting for the Mexican army because they were Catholic and they didn't like the way American soldiers were treating Catholics. As far as the actual fighting and the actual campaigns are concerned, The United States is able to seize California and New Mexico almost immediately, and these were the main goals for Polk in conducting this war. General Zachary Taylor is conducting successful campaigns against the Mexicans, but the Mexicans refuse to surrender. Another general, Winfield Scott, conducts the first United States amphibious landing. It's the beginning of the United States Marine Corps with a victory at Veracruz. This was seen as a highly improbable victory, was seen as attacking the strongest fortress in the Americas. But Scott and the Marines are able to take the fortress, they establish themselves in Mexico, and then through a series of brilliant battles, they capture Mexico City, at which point the Mexicans agree to surrender. And as part of this treaty, they give up the lands that the United States wanted, which make up more than half of Mexico. That suggests you've lost a war pretty badly when you lose more than half your territory. Interestingly enough, this was actually the most deadly war that the United States ever fought. In terms of the proportion of its soldiers that went to war and were killed, this war had the highest proportion, either through death or through disease. And so now the war has come to an end, and the United States seems to have fulfilled its manifest destiny. It's become a truly transcontinental power. It has huge new tracts of land to settle and to colonize and to establish as part of this new country. Just going to end this week with a little bit of material about the history of Mexico during this period, just because it's very interesting. As I said, most Mexicans didn't want to become independent, but it was more the way that the Spanish kingdom was changing. The Spanish monarchy was either being conquered and becoming very weak, or it was becoming very progressive that they didn't want. And so they break away, become independent in 1821, but they actually choose to remain a monarchy. Monarchy ruled by a man named Agustin Iturbide. And Iturbide remains the king for about 4 years. But this Mexican, independent Mexico, is constantly beset by financial problems. And so Iturbide is overthrown by a general, General Santa Anna. And so Santa Anna, this general, makes himself the president, and he is the general who's fighting against the Texans in the Texan War for Independence. After that defeat, what's known as the First Mexican Republic collapses and is replaced by the Second Mexican Republic, which has a new constitution that's promulgated in 1835. There are a couple of main points to this constitution that kind of reflect what Mexico's going through at the time. First is that citizenship is available for anyone who can read. The second is that the president has basically supreme power over the government, can suppress the houses of government. You have a lower house elected by the people, an upper house that's elected by the lower house, and the judiciary is established in the same way. And states are suppressed in favor of government districts. And so what you can see with all of these measures is that there's a real focus on centralization. And so we have this tension in the United States in this period of history. How to expand, how to integrate these different states while not becoming an overbearing government. And Mexico is an interesting example of going too quickly. The United States, some people might argue, goes too slowly in creating an integrated, unified nation. But Mexico tries to go very quickly, and actually it leads to instability. It doesn't help that they're being invaded by the United States at the time, and so the Second Republic that we find with this constitution collapses after the Mexican-American War. In 1855, it's replaced by a new constitution, but a new very progressive institution, which tries to marginalize Christianity in the society. And so this leads to unrest, and Mexican rebels, with the support of the French army, will actually place an Austrian noble on the throne of Mexico as a monarch in 1864. So that's the very turbulent story told very quickly of Mexico in the mid-19th century. It becomes independent, tries to establish itself as a fully unified nation. There's a lot of instability, but it's going to conclude this period, and we'll hopefully come back and talk about this a little more, actually as a monarchy.